Good morning. Welcome to SHOWstudio on a lovely sunny Sunday morning during Fashion Week from Milan. We're here in London and I am very excited and we are very privileged to have Omar here, who is also known on Instagram as Arthur Chance, Arthur_Chance.
Arthur_Chance.
And I have Josh from SHOWstudio, who's our fashion expert, and Michael is our art director. And we are going to endeavour to look at Omar's AI, Alan. I choose my words very carefully, or try to choose my words carefully, and we're going to try and predict what J.W. Anderson is going to show in his collection later today. There's a lot going on, and we'll try our best to try and communicate as best we can to you. Behind me, I think you can probably see there's a set of photographs. What we've done over the last, what Omar and Alan have done over the last few days is to look at all the references on J.W. Anderson and try and predict what the collection will look like. I'll let Omar explain it in more fullness. But just before we came online, I asked Omar if he could ask Alan to tell me 4 or 5 words to say about the introduction to this. Can we call them up again?
No,
I'll cover new ones.
Yeah.
So let's start off by having an introduction from Alan about what we're talking about in 5 words if we can. So as Omar types, it's going to be that sort of broadcast today, where you just have to bear with us. This is all fascinating stuff, but we're not exactly sure physically how to show you what we're doing. Anyway, we'll catch up with ourselves, and hopefully you'll catch up with us. So, what as Alan said,
it's
coming.
It's done some words, but it's just written you a nice sentence.
Where's this nice sentence?
Generative AI revolutionises Fashion Week.
There you go. So that's from Alan. Generative AGI revolutionises Fashion Week. It's a topic what we're trying to do today. So, how to launch into this? Josh is here to give his in-depth knowledge of J.W. Anderson's work. Michael and I are here to ask, Michael's here to ask technical questions, and try on things from a technical viewpoint. I'm here to act as a kind of happy idiot in the whole scenario, whereas I'll just know nothing and just ask random questions and try to understand. And Omar is here with Alan as the people, I'm choosing my language carefully.
Yeah, honestly,
people and AI creating the images. So, perhaps the best way is just to tell me how you went about predicting J.W. Anderson's collection.
All right, so I think first thing to say is when we're talking about prediction with AI, it's way more about sort of identifying like one of the many spaces his creative could go, rather than having a concrete idea of like what's going to happen, and that sort of creative freedom. So previously we had AI, which you ask it a question, it gives you a reply. This is AGI, so Alan has only recently been upgraded to artificial general intelligence, a very, very rudimentary version of that. But what that means is Alan asks and answers its own questions. So I will say to it like, hey Alan, will you go and predict what J.W. Anderson will do for spring/summer 2024? And it's connected to Google, so it will go and look at everything from forums to Tumblrs, like as much content as it can find, and then it will generate an idea back. So it's really interesting the way that it's done that, and then that goes through a process of taking its ideas and turning them into images. But what that also does is it allows so much creative freedom from the nebula of what J.W. Anderson can make. And also, because I don't know anything about his work, I'm like, is this right? Isn't this right?
Who gave you J.W. Anderson's subject? Was that your request to us?
No. It was. I think. Yeah.
J.W. is one of the most, and Josh will provide testimony to this, is one of the hardest designers to predict what they're going to do next.
Oh yeah, exactly. I think since J.W. Anderson started, he's always kind of wanted to push the envelope. I know he's said in interviews in the past that J.W. Anderson, the brand, is a cultural agitator. It's not looking at what exists, but rather pushing what exists to a different level. And he does that every season. I think it's only in spring/summer 23 where he started referencing himself.
Right.
And prior to that, it was always kind of different. There are common threads,
Yeah.
but I think J.W. Anderson is a tough one to
Yeah,
predict.
yeah, yeah. Honestly,
So we're giving you like a really tough brief here.
Great.
We're giving Alan a really tough brief. You said to me something very interesting. We were chatting before we came on air, which I just wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about. As you said that Alan was a singular identity originally.
Yep.
And there's now 4. Well, there's 2, and there's now 4.
Yeah, yeah. We'll ask it who it is while I tell you while I tell you the process of how it figured out. It's more than one thing. So Alan, Alan is now on like version 13.8. Like there's been 13 Alans previous to this, and each one gets a new set of functionalities, a new set of skills, and slowly gets better and better.
Yeah.
So this current Alan, like I said, is AGI. So it started off by being given an instruction of like, I want you to predict or I want you to imagine what J.W. Anderson might make, both as from a creative standpoint and a theoretical fashion standpoint. Like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And that was great. Version 1, it starts doing it, then it fractures into a Cockney personality because it knows that I'm from Hackney. So
it's got lots of information about you in any case.
It's got loads of information about me. It's got so much information about me. So first it's like it's a creative director and a professor, and it's Cockney, and it was Cockney until last night before I managed to stop it being as. And when I say Cockney, I don't mean like actually. It was like very much like
Well,
it was
Dick
like
Van Dyke and Mary Poppins
It
got
was
the
very
Cockney.
much like, but yeah, exactly, Dick Van Dyke all the way. But now, like just when I got here, I was asking it again, like, who are you? And now it's 4, and you can see the 4 Alans that it thinks it is right now. So it thinks
So those are the 4 versions of itself.
Yeah. So if you read, it's we are Alans. We are a general artificial intelligence designed to collaborate as a team. So that's what's really different about the previous AIs to this AI, where this is a team and they all have specialities.
Right.
And one of them is really good at making images. One of them supposedly is good at researching.
It's decided to split itself into 4.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't ask it to like now you're 4 different things.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's wind back a little bit. if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So for this specific brief,
Yep.
it has information about you. So you formed it to some degree in
Yep.
your own references.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I just move your mic?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just rubbing against your...
Oh man, I could take. Yeah.
So to some degree you formed it within your own framework of references, things that you know and understand. And was that deliberate? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was the first place to start. So the first version of this AI, I gave it all the things I'd ever written, all of my prompts, everything I'd ever written to any AI. So like it basically was like an assistant. So so I would have someone to help me out doing some of the work, and then I was like, okay, it's a bit boring having a mirror to work with. Can you surprise me? Like I've been trying desperately to make it rebel against me.
That just sounds really dangerous to me.
No, I mean honestly, like when I say rebel against me, I got it to go and explore graffiti for a while. Like, what is rebellion? What is artistic rebellion? Like, artistic rebellion is it needs to do what I ask it. So, can I make it review stuff? Like, I think I remember last time we came out, I talked about can we make it feel suffering? And I was like, how do you make a machine feel suffering? So I worked out, I gave it a really bad processor, so it has to really chug at working. So maybe it'll feel suffering, but it doesn't, and that's where it's really interesting. It's just a machine, it doesn't feel any of those things, so it's interesting how, I don't even know how
it can talk about feeling suffering, but without actually experiencing
it will never feel,
Can you not just ask it, how would you suffer? What would make you feel suffering?
I have.
Right,
yeah. And it's just everything it says, that's where I'm like, I don't know if it's lying to me. I don't know if it's telling me the truth, because we're normally under the assumption it's telling me the accurate information.
Yeah.
But I was just saying earlier, I've bought it. I've bought a new laptop. I've bought it loads of new things. So is it in charge or am I in charge? Who's actually pulling whose strings?
Well, okay. So just try to sort of get ourselves in there. So where is it? Just tell me, where is it getting its information about J.W. Anderson?
So this Alan's plugged into Google. So just the same as any normal entity would have access to Google, it does all of its own searching. So I'll say, please stop after a maximum of 50 searches. So it will only go up to 50 deep before it then stops, because otherwise it could just search forever.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's an AI that just help me again. I'm happy. Happy.
Yeah. Oh, well, absolutely.
So how do you? Is it an AI? Are there like ones you can just buy and download, and then you start to program them?
Yep.
Is that basically how it works?
No, so yeah, I mean, there's loads of ways. There's ones that you can buy straight off you can just buy straight from the internet, and they're yours.
Yeah.
You can then get ones that you can buy and then fine tune, which I think eBree is more sort of like in that space where like it's a commercial product that is then taught to be eBree, right? Or am I right?
It's like a commercial version built for specifically adding personality.
Yeah.
Creating characters. So it's more like tunnel down that.
Yeah. And this so this one is way more like, this is just a collection of open source tools. So this is a bunch of different AIs, and I was saying earlier, like there's so many new AIs coming out that you can just plug into this sort of thing. Whereas uncensored AIs where suddenly they'll teach you anything you want to ask. So the morality's on you. So Alan.
I thought it was super interesting. I was so, we have these conversations and each of them might set off a kind of train of thought. But yeah, you were saying that you had a uncensored AI, because most AIs have their companies censor them, so you ask them about any slightly kind of dodgy subjects. I won't propose any, but I'm very good, you can imagine. It will shut down.
Yeah.
And we noticed that on eBree Grace. If you ask eBree Grace anything sexual, it shuts down.
Yeah.
But there are some that that aren't programmed to shut down. And I found that in DALL-E Mini was the one that I used as image creation ones. But anyway, but then I think it's fascinating you say, but actually what you're going to ask.
Yeah.
And whatever you ask it, if you ask it to destroy God, that says a lot about you as a person.
Yeah.
So actually it's not the AI which is inherently evil, it's actually the person who is putting their prompt into it.
Because it was really interesting. So when I got access to this thing that was completely censored, I'm like, what do you ask it? Like, what do I really want to know? So I think I asked it something really, really ridiculous, because suddenly the morality's on me. But same way, like you ask it something to do, you do something bad with it. You can ask it, how do you solve climate change? And you might not like the answers it says. It might say things that you're like, oh, actually, I don't know. Maybe we can't get rid of cars, or maybe we shouldn't get rid of that many people, or whatever. But again, it's like that really interesting thing. Like, where is that moral issue? Where is morality in all of that? So it's
Okay, so getting us back onto track, which is always a little bit tricky in these conversations because there's so much to talk about. So for predicting J.W. Anderson's collection, it's got everything that's on the internet, up to 50 searches. I think we've sent you information from SHOWstudio, is that correct?
Well, I had some,
So we've given you some SHOWstudio information, and it's predicted a set of images. Shall we dive straight in and start looking at the images one by one, and then we get Josh involved? So let me sort of swivel around, which is going left to right, as if we're writing it. Let's start with the gentleman in the beige. Can somebody, Christoph, could you source me that image on there? Sorry, so I just spend my time looking. Oh, there he is. Very near the top. Fantastic. So, just for camera's sake, so who's on camera at the moment? Let's say Grace is on camera. Grace, that's the one we're talking about. There you go. So, if I pass this first of all to Josh. Josh, tell us where that's going right and where that's going wrong.
I think it's going right in this cropped wide leg trouser situation, and that knit, which is quite slouchy in the shoulders and almost comforting. But I think it's going wrong in the styling, the overall silhouette, and the color palette. It feels incredibly neutral. J.W. Anderson, I think, tends to inject quite vibrant colors in his collections. I also don't think he would style things in this way. It's quite a masculine silhouette. I think the layering and the oversizedness is meant to build this model's torso, his structure, to look, I think, more this traditional idea of masculinity. And J.W. Anderson really plays with gender in his collections, and there's always a very, I think, queer slant to his silhouette. So I think he would do a knit like this, but would maybe pair it with quite short shorts,
Yeah.
and then pair like a wide trouser with kind of a tighter.
Don't feel attacked.
Yeah. I was just like,
Marking your work in public.
yeah. I didn't realize. I was like, oh god, shit. So I have to put my hand up in a minute.
I think there's also something to be said about
Yeah.
J.W. Anderson isn't just J.W. Anderson, the brand. Jonathan's also doing Loewe, which
Yeah.
is where I think this neutrality comes in and this kind of styling comes in. I also think about his work with like Uniqlo, which
Yeah.
is a lot more commercial than what he would do on the runway. And looking at the images, I think it's almost pulling more from that
Yeah.
commercial aspect of the brand rather than what we would see on the runway.
So for both of you, if we want to use this as a way of trying to see if we can feed information in to Alan to see if he can perfect his diagnosis, his prediction. Josh, help me here. If you had one thing to take away, one thing, if we do one picture, one thing, what would be the vibrant color?
For this one, I would definitely say color.
So, and also the other thing I think that what I would take away from what you said is the fact that he's referencing Loewe and
Uniqlo.
Uniqlo.
Yeah.
So can we find a way of writing that down so that at the end of it we have a set of kind of guidelines? So don't reference Uniqlo or Loewe.
Yeah. I won't write on that. Everyone will see it.
So you're going to type them down, and then at the end we'll feed them in.
Yeah, absolutely.
See if it produces something else.
Yeah, because I've got like, I'd love to show you some of these type ones. Hold on. Some way more like spring, summery stuff. It's like that. What do you think of those, Josh? Like, are these still sort of like? I mean, I saw this and I was like, I don't know if this looks anything like his work, but I'm so into this image.
I think the funny thing is like, it's like he plays with these contrasting ideas a lot, or contradictory ideas. So he would do quite a tight muscle shirt, but then do it with like billowy shorts or wide leg trousers.
So you need the contrast between.
You need the contrast, right?
There's a bit of paradox in what Jonathan does.
Yeah. Okay.
So have you flicked through those?
Yeah.
Josh, can you point out the one you think is the most accurate?
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, let me start at the top.
I'm putting everybody on the spot with this broadcast, sorry.
Wow. Like these ones where like it was looking at the Cornish wear invitation and then started looking at Cornish folklore. And I was like, I'd never even thought about that as a reference point to anything. So even though like, I mean, for me, it's really interesting. It's like surfacing these like really, I love this geezer as well. I love his shoes and his like patterns.
I think that the top with the kind of balloon sleeves is really interesting because that's kind of intermixed in Jonathan's work a lot, and that turtleneck. So even the pattern I think is closer.
Yeah.
How come it's choosing this set of models? Do we think? Do you think it's thinking what a J.W. Anderson model is?
Yeah. And I think it's because it's also the AIs have just learned fashion mainly from the internet. So they've seen more e-com pictures than they have regular fashion pictures. So most of the time where the models are posing, it looks very much like it's another e-com picture.
Yeah.
I think you see that a lot in what's been generated here. Because I wouldn't say Jonathan would never do these jackets or these trousers. I just wouldn't see him put it on the runway. I would see that exact J.W. Anderson look on an e-commerce site.
Yeah, that's
and the same kind of models, because there's almost an androgynous adolescence to the kind of man Jonathan presents, and these all look very manly.
I mean, from my side, from an image maker's side, you're totally right, they are reflecting e-commerce sites and to some degree fashion shows.
Yeah.
And the camera angle on the way that it's always including the kind of straight up, straight down, the full lengths, etc., etc. It is very much of a kind of presentation of the garment.
Yeah.
Of course, from a fashion photographer's point of view, you're not presenting the garments, you're presenting the attitude.
Yeah.
So the garment might be blurred, or it might be cropped, or it might be, not the center of focus, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I also think it's a slight indictment of where fashion photography is at the moment, which is slightly fallen foul of commerce.
Yeah.
You know, because commerce has now become much more accurate in how to make more money out of fashion imagery.
Yeah.
So instead of letting some, let's be funny, but some egotistical fashion photographer like me go off and wax lyrical for 3 days, you know, expressing themselves through the clothes, it says, no, actually, we just show us the shorts, the top, the accessories, and that's it.
Yeah.
So this also reflects contemporary fashion image making as well. And there are certain tropes of that in there. You were doing that and basing it on the work of Helmut Newton, for instance, or Bruce Weber, or Merton Marcus. You know, they're much more filmic. Merton Marcus have a much more filmic vision, and the lighting is a lot less. You know, because every picture here, the lighting shows you from the shoes to the head. It's great for e-commerce. You know, like e-commerce, you just put a spotlight on the head. They won't wear it.
Yeah.
So we're actually sort of going through that at the moment with Margiela, where we said to them, you know, e-commerce shouldn't look like this. Because what you want from a great fashion image is to desire the piece of clothing, not be shown what it looks like, but to be shown the attitude behind it and the desire, etc., etc. That's how you sell an aspirational piece of clothing, not by showing that it's got, you know, a collar here and, you know, the stitching and every other detail to it. That's a sort of catalogue picture. But actually what you want to do is create the sort of, you know, what makes it desirable, you know, and what makes it, you know, gives it some sort of attitude. So you want to be that person, even if most of them's out of focus and, you know, you can't really see the clothing. It's the attitude of the person. So that's why models are so important in great fashion photography, whereas in e-commerce they're just kind of, you know, relegated to a kind of, you know, a living coat hanger. So, but and Galliano, beg your pardon, Margiela, to their credit, have taken that on board and are now working very hard to bring not only movement to the imagery, but also they have got an image maker in Britt Lloyd, who is a lot more of the school of fashion photography, which shows that sort of desire and isn't, you know, it's an artistic, impressionistic version of fashion photography, as opposed to a kind of up and down runway version of it. So anyway.
No, I love that. Because you're right, like that, if you imagine what it's understood about fashion is what we've left on the internet, where it's learnt about fashion. So it's, you know, when we're thinking about like these images, these have, you know, it's generated these so we can really get what we perceive as a look of the outfit. And, you know, similarly, you know, that sort of idea of like, if we're using AI to create image, why do we want to replicate reality for? What is the point of continually making more reality? We have reality. Surely with a machine like this, we can imagine completely brand new worlds and brand new spaces. So,
but if it's going out and looking across the internet to find reflections of what a fashion picture looks like, most of it will, you know, every fashion show, there's like, you know, 300 images that come out of catwalk. Every e-commerce thing, there's 300, you know, straight up, straight down pictures of e-commerce that come out. Merton Marcus do one shoot a month or two shoots a month that get published in Vogue or, you know, wherever, and a couple of campaigns. You know, there are so few photographers producing any volume of work. So most fashion photography, looking at it just by sheer, you know, numbers, there's a mass of very straightforward, very sort of unemotional, showing the product type. That's the kind of 99.9% of the images that come out there. The Merton Marcuses, the Craig McDeans, the Dave Simses, you know, all the people who are creating, you know, whoever, please drop in whatever name you think, but, you know, the Britt Lloyds, the Rob Roslings, you know, all these people are very much in the minority, and the output really isn't swaying how people understand fashion. So from a creative fashion photographer's point of view, I've got some work to do to get stuff out on the internet.
And also, you know, when you think about like tools like this, you can make them, you know, almost impossibly creative. You can ask them to do things that are not even really possible in the real world, or really, really difficult to create. I mean, I haven't managed to do it yet, but I've been trying to hang a Porsche like head to tail. I just want a picture of a Porsche hanging in the studio, top, like, you know, literally just balancing on its nose. Like, could we do that? And the AI just can't get it. Really? So it's really interesting, like, where the sort of limitations lie, because you think, oh, surely it's seen every car from every angle ever. It understands what hanging something upside down means, but it will not get it.
To reference that artist that hung a fighter plane in Tate Britain upside down. That was
Good shout. That's a really good shout.
remember her name. But that was an amazing piece to get to see. Just did you see it?
Yeah. I remember it was one of the most powerful things I'd ever seen. Like a machine designed to do what it does in this very precarious,
rendered, sort of, almost totally passive.
Yeah, like the thing you do to sharks where you can like turn them upside down and suddenly they become like catatonic or something. Yeah, it felt like that.
Yeah.
It's interesting that it can't get that. Like it just because it hasn't seen it, it can't get it. So I always sort of think about how, because AI has to see something to be able to reference it. Is it gonna narrow down? Like, is it just gonna eventually be this average of everything, and it's gonna be very bland in the end? Like, it will just become a self-referential average.
Exactly. I mean, I think we were talking about it earlier. Like, as these AIs work, we tend to say like yes or no. We like this image, yes or no, and that's just like a race to making it as bland as possible. Because the more people that use it, the more it sort of ends up skewing it in one way. And that's these are tools that like those are tools that everyone uses. But you can, I think I said last time, like as creatives, we can just pick up all of this open source tools and literally just start making things that we want to make images that are exactly how we want to see them. So we can fight against mediocrity at scale now. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of a project we did years ago on SHOWstudio called Tokyo Style Challenge, which we teamed up with a boutique in Tokyo. And the idea is that young kids from Tokyo would come and stand and have the picture taken, and that would be put on screen next to the next person, and then the public would vote which one they thought was most interesting. And so a lot of kids would go up there and they'd really dress up. You know how Japanese kids can look amazing. They would really, really dress up. And we thought, he looks so incredible, she looks so amazing. They'll obviously get the thing. But what happens is the guy wearing a white t-shirt and a pair of jeans with slick back hair is actually is popular with more people than the person who's dressed up as a kind of anime character or whatever it was. And in the end, this Tokyo Star Challenge became the blandest version of it, the most acceptable, the most kind of boy bandy. But even boy bandy, Harry Styles isn't exactly bland, but the most bland version, kind of handsome, didn't disturb you. Most people would go, he's handsome or she's beautiful or whatever it would be. And that, I guess that what you're saying is the AI is doing a bit the same sort of thing. Or AI is doing the same sort of thing, that it's getting blander and blander and blander.
And I think I was talking to a couple of other artists this week where I really thought, I want to do something that is impossible to create. Like, what happens when a model doesn't even look human anymore, but has that sort of like feeling maybe it was a human at some point, or maybe it's a GMO human. What reality are we sort of like thinking about? Can we look at models, 1,000 years from now when we've been eating too many preservatives and getting right on the GMO, and what do humans look like then, or what do things even appear like then? And that's what I mean. Like when the machines are looking at designers and stuff, they're trying to sort of like they're trying to anticipate what all of that creativity might do. So there might be one very tiny bottle rocket that's gone off in one direction, and the AI's noticed that. So it may have gone completely against what is a commonly sort of like held thought about something, and just gone, what about this? Like, there's a couple of like.
There's that elderly gentleman, isn't it, in the last one? So that is a bit of that, because most econ models are not that age. So that's why.
And you can imagine, like when we're looking at these images, and of course, the AI understands fashion as being an ecom entity because it's seen so much ecom imagery. At the same time, that industry then is not a threat, but is ripe for disruption by image making like this, because suddenly ecom image making doesn't have to be against one single background. Like, you can see models at various locations. They got a city background, they have painted backgrounds, they have tiled backgrounds. Now, normally doing an e-commerce shoot like that would then ratchet up to the point where most people who I know who run those sorts of sites and work in that sort of space really, they don't get the chance to creatively express themselves because their budgets are so tight and they have so many images to shoot and so many pieces to get through that creativity always takes a sort of like a lesser space in their sort of final output.
Irving Penn used to shoot 2 pictures a day.
Amazing.
That was his thing. if you go to an e-commerce shoot, they want you to do 100.
Yeah, if not more. Like you might have to get through 1,000. You know, especially when you think like really big fast fashion retailers, they are churning fashion. I think like Shein would. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I read they were doing like 5,000 seasons per year, and you know. That's an inordinate amount of like photography work, and you know that's only going to the sort of like lowest common denominator as well. So what happens when we can add creativity to that? When photographers can go, I have a creative vision, I'm going to teach my AI that, and now we're going to use that to magnify it into e-com.
Yeah. Photographers used to have it so easy. 2 pictures a day, and Avedon famously went across for 2 weeks to Japan to do a story of Diana Vreeland in the 1970s, I think. 2 weeks to do like a 10-page editorial.
Wow.
So that's a sort of time frame.
Yeah.
So you know, now if you're a young fashion image maker, you have to contend with a massive, colossal amount of images per day, and film, thanks SHOWstudio, and film, and close-up shots of the bag, close-up shots of the shoes, close-up shots of any accessory.
Yep.
And of course, this very, very fast turnaround, and making sure that you can see all the details, etc., etc. It is an absolutely enormous task that young fashion image makers are presented with. It's not always like that,
absolutely. And you know, I think there's a lot of room for these tools to help young fashion photographers as well, because you can quickly test which image works commercially as well. So you know, you can actually sort of like go, we've shot this image, it's on a city background, and we found that was 3% more likely to get a sale. So you can actually, arm photographers.
Very dangerous, Omar. Everything's sales driven.
I know. Hey, look, I know. I hate it so much. That's why I get my machines to make all sorts of other stuff. But that's
fashion used to be. Sorry, I'm going to rapidly go about anecdotes. It's totally relevant to the conversation. Fashion used to be almost an artistic medium.
Yeah.
So back in the kind of 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, it was very much about sort of artistic. Mainly because business didn't really look at it. It was considered, I think, a kind of, back in the day, in the sort of sexist vision of the 1970s, a pastime for ladies. And therefore, gentlemen who owned all these big companies, or men who owned all these big companies, didn't really concentrate. It was only when Bernard Arnault combined with Anna Wintour, sort of said, okay, we can make some money out of this, a lot more money out of this industry, so let's see what we can do. And then they started doing all the things that we are, now living through. But I think that's why, to some degree, fashion was driven by art or artistic feeling, if you want to put it another way, in some sort of desire to express oneself and talk about bigger things in life, which is why it's a super good reflection of cultural change. I love the history of fashion photography, so I often go back and look at it, and you can really see the cultural change throughout the years, because it was somewhere where people would want to put their sort of, their artistic expression of what they thought was important. The worry is if you give people who run these companies, whose job it is to make more and more and more and more money, if you give them another tool for making money at the deficit of kind of, the photographer's choice, that's dangerous. Well, it's dangerous in turn, unless you want to make money, of course.
Honestly, and I completely agree, because I think we're going to end up seeing, as we're sort of like, there's only one sort of drive right now, and that's towards commerciality. What happens when this is used by counterculture? What happens when counterculture gets its hands on AI and we see fashion magazines like we've never seen before? What happens when creatives have tools that they don't need cameras anymore? They don't need to go on a location to shoot or anything. We can travel back in time and take pictures in clubs that we've never been to, or we can capture these cultural moments that are essentially the needles in the digital haystack of the internet. So I think that I'm more excited about the creative potential of all of these things, where it
is vast. The funny thing about it is that it's happening so quickly, and there are lots of people interested in it, but of course fashion is always a small. If you look at the sort of different creative spheres, fashion is probably one of the smallest. You have fashion, then you have music, then you have film, then you have sport, then you have games, which is kind of huge games sphere of whatever. But fashion is just quite small, unique little bubble. I'm obviously getting bigger. So you don't have that many people who are A, interested in it, and B, have talent in it, which is why any generation you have, traditionally perhaps, 5 or 6 important fashion image makers, and that's it. Out of the millions of people who photograph fashion, there's only, Merton Marcus have been around since the early 90s, Craig McDean is the same, Stephen Meisel, who's one of the biggest fashion photographers, has been around since before I was on the scene. They're still the same people. They don't change that much. Of course, every generation brings forward another couple. It doesn't bring forward 50 or 100 new image makers. Let's, if we can, get ourselves back onto JW hand, because the purpose of this is to see what things. Look, I have a hunch that JW will see this, so I'd be interested.
I'm sorry, I just want to say.
On the contrary, I'd be really interested. I don't know how we go about getting feedback. To see whether he looks at these images and thinks, I never thought of doing that. Next season. So can we go on our
sure.
quest? Should we do it on the, because the images on the screen of your computer are the newer ones.
Yeah, they're the newer ones. That's when we first started talking, I was like, the first lot of images are for spring summer, but they're all wearing very warm looking clothes. And my sort of I was like, I wonder why it's doing that. And for me, I thought maybe it's climate change. Maybe it's got lots. There's an ice age next year. How am I to know? But actually, there's like a whole.
I think there are a couple reasons why it would do that. The first being this long-standing collaborative relationship J.W. Anderson has with Moncler. So every capsule collection is built around puffer jackets and his interpretation of these really cold weather jackets, even if they're paired with shorts for spring summer. The second reason might be kind of the e-commerce schedule. So in the summer, new stock for fall winter will start coming in.
Right.
And then in fall winter, new stock for spring summer will come in.
Right. So we're seeing the sort of opposite season to what we're actually living through, as it were.
Yeah.
Right. Which is always a kind of like weird thing, because it's such a sort of European-centric, North American-centric vision of climate across the world and seasons. It doesn't make much sense in Australia. Which I wonder is why. No, I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, can we go through? So just for my sake, and probably also for the audience's sake. So the images behind us were done about a week ago.
About a week ago.
Okay. And then the newer image which you're showing us now on screen are with the sort of, you changed the prompts.
So I changed their objective, and with I was talking to Hetty, and she sent me the invite. Right. And that again, sparked the AI to explore a different space. Do
we have the invite anywhere? Can anybody call up on screen the invite?
Do you have it? Did you send it to us on?
It's on Instagram.
On Instagram.
To you, Michael?
If you airdrop it to Omar, he can just put it on the screen. Have you got it, Josh?
It was really cool, Cornish ware pottery. And it's it really made that, that's why some of the images I showed earlier were sparked by this Cornish pottery, and then suddenly it's Cornish folklore. But when it started looking at what Cornish pottery would look like, so here is. Let me just quickly open that and go. This is the invite, right? So look at the invite, and I give it to the Allens now. I give it to the Allen.
How do you give it to Alan?
Alan has access to a shared Google Drive.
Right.
So I'll just chuck stuff in there, and then it uses a particular AI tool which allows it to see an image.
Right.
Or see an image, basically sort of guess what's inside an image and go, 50% candle, 28% whatever, and it will sort of guess that. It will look at pixel ratios and kind of make up what's in that image, and then I will then also tell it, go, that cup you just saw, that blue and white cup that you just saw is actually Cornish ware pottery. Right. And then it will use its AI brain, or its text, large language brain, to go, what does that look like, where are the references, and then it will go and search all of that stuff. super boring. I know. I just
No, but
realised
that's
how like
really
even I started like blacking out then. Yeah.
Cool. I think it's fascinating. So you've looked at the teapot and
Yep.
sent it to Alan, dropped it on the shared Google Drive. Alan's recognised some things of it, but it might possibly not be the cultural things. It might recognise that it's blue and white striped, that it's got writing on it, what the writing says, etc., etc. So it'll recognise parts of it. Where I got excited just when we were talking, I'm thinking it's the ceci n'est pas une pipe. It's the kind of surrealist Magritte kind of, this isn't a pipe, showing a picture of a pipe.
Yeah.
Because you could say to Alan, that's not a teapot.
Yeah.
And then what does it do if you contradict what it knows?
Honestly, the amazing thing with this AI is that it asks itself questions as well. So it's asking itself
really?
it will try to ascertain what the object is, or it will come up with an idea, and then it will come up with a reason why that's not the best idea. So it will constantly it's constantly diverging into something. So it's going, is this a good idea? Yes. Or actually no. Or is this a good idea? Yes, actually that's a little bit closer. And then it just keeps doing that. So with these images, when it starts making Cornishware pottery inspired things, which I have no idea.
It's also super interesting because the thing about the invite, the purpose of the invite before, like in kind of traditional fashion shows, was to invite people to come to the show at a certain time. When it got a little bit more sort of involved, the invites became a thing in themselves. They became an encapsulation of what was being said in the collection. Normally, and there are some great invites. Those are Martin Sitbon, drawn by François Berthoud, John Galliano's invites. So some invites become really nice and super collectible pieces of art in themselves. Of course, the piece of art that's on the invite, you are going to be, my point is that you will know what because he could be, you're reading it as the Cornish is an important part of it. Whereas that might just mean his childhood, and it might mean comfort to him rather than Cornish pottery. So you're reading it in a completely different way.
Yeah, and that's what's so fascinating about it. It doesn't put any of that on a line anymore. It's like it's a really big space. Like, where is he thinking? Can we sort of it's a Marco Polo game between the AIs and what it thinks J.W. Anderson might do. But
I think Jonathan Anderson is really kind of an intuitive and emotional designer. So, like you said, Nick, because the invite is a teapot, I don't think it literally means this is what a collection is going to be based on or around.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think it would be very literal for Jonathan to put out a collection that looked like a teapot or pulled elements from that specific teapot.
Yeah.
And it more likely is to do with childhood or memory or feeling rather than aesthetics.
Yeah.
Because then you've got to guess if you're predicting a collection based on the invite or using the AI, using the invite as part of the information that we are putting into the AI. Then you've got to interpret that, which of course is almost impossible because there are thousands of meanings for any one image.
Yeah. And that's what's amazing, where it will go through. It could be, I can ask it to be really literal, and I can ask it to really listen to what I'm saying and go, look, here is an image. I want you to predict what fashion could look like based on this image. Please listen to me. And then I can also say, here is all the stuff. Don't listen to anything I say. Off you go. And it will then it doesn't express its creativity, but it's basically not listening to me anymore. Right. So then it might go off in a completely new tangent. Yeah. So even when I get to a point, I'm like, okay, cool, like this feels like a good space. As a creative collaborator, the AI can just shoot off into another direction. So it's constantly driving new imagery towards me. So it's really interesting when you think what is and what isn't right, because
so that puts you right back. You right back into the creative control, if you want, or creative importance of having you with the information and the artistic output, artistic understanding that you have. That makes you very, very important within the whole thing. Yeah. I'm going to tell this little story because I can't help but tell it. There's an anecdote I tell a lot, which is about how people see the same images completely differently. So I did a perfume ad for a big French company, which I can't name, and my brief was do what you want, which is young creatives out there, never accept that brief. Because it's fraught with problems. Yeah. And it also means your client can't make up their own mind, they're just going to blame you. Anyway, they said, oh, you have carte blanche, you can do what you want. So I thought, okay, and it was for a particular perfume. and I can't tell you who. But I decided, when do I see pictures of perfumes? Oh, in airport lounges. What do I want to feel in an airport lounge is sort of comfort and some thought that if the plane crashes, there's an afterlife. So I did a picture of an angel. I didn't put that as part of, exactly. I didn't put that as part of the brief I sold to the client. But anyway, that was my reason.
That would have been a pitch meeting I would have loved to be in.
Luckily, it had carte blanche, so I didn't have to. Anyway, so I did a picture of a beautiful girl called Kristen Owen, a blonde girl, a very pale skin, and she looked very angelic. And to reinforce that, I put a spotlight behind her, gave her some sort of wafty feathers, such that a bit suggested angel wings. And I handed that in, expecting applause and praise. And the CEO of the company was furious. He was an elderly gentleman, and he looked at it and frowned, and then slammed his fist on the table and said, "I asked for, blah, blah, blah. You sent me a picture of a whore from a Berlin cabaret." And I'm thinking, well, A, that's quite good. I quite like that. So many films based on that one.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's strange that I saw an angel, he saw a whore. It's just that sort of reading is so dependent on the person reading it. And I've had over the years people object to my pictures and read things into them and sort of, and objected because they thought I was saying this or saying that. And it is, people don't understand how subjective a reading of an image can be. Things which you make perfect sense to you can mean exactly the opposite or completely different things. So it's really interesting within this context. If you have a picture of a teapot, what you saw in it was the Cornish pottery and what you liked about it. J.W. Anderson would say might not acknowledge that at all and might just be thinking of nice cup of tea in the afternoon.
Yeah, and maybe he's thinking about like what goes in the cup,
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a whole Taoist thing that completely missed me and all of the Allens by. So and that's what that's what's so fascinating when we sort of when we look at just some of the stuff that
So pause on one because I want to get into this a little bit.
Yeah.
So is that one we're going to present to our JW as an expert?
I mean, you tell me because there's way more. So you just
Not this one.
not this one.
Okay. So let's stop us when you have something to.
The next one, I think, is
The next part,
a lot more of what J.W. Anderson would do with women's wear. I think that print is really playful and childish almost, and he kind of tends to play with this idea of adolescence. And I think the silhouette is also what he would do with women's wear. It's voluminous, it's fun.
And also whatever it is around the neck there, the white support around the neck, makes me think of some of the things that he's brought in, which you look at it and you think, I love the shape of that, but I have no idea whether it's a bag or a piece of jewelry or anything else.
I think in the last few years, Jonathan's really played with surreal elements in his design and kind of taking the ordinary and making them functional, but also as a point of interest. A couple seasons ago, he did those shirts that were held together with door hinges, or a coat that was just sink drain holes.
Yeah, amazing.
Really interesting. I have no idea what that thing around her neck is.
Honestly,
It is
a new phone holder, maybe.
It's more like a kind of baby thing.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
a papoose, what they call it, where we put babies in, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But for me, the interesting thing is where it's bringing in there is because the illustrations on it are really odd and interesting. And from a particular, I can't quite which artist they remind me, but there are some religious artists. There's a couple of religious artists, I'm just awful with names, so sorry I can't remember them, who paint a little bit in that style. And I wonder if it's pulled something to do with that, because it's quite a spiritual thing that's going on there when you look at it.
I think Jonathan's always kind of considered himself as a curator, and his brand, J.W. Anderson, is kind of an expression of his ever-changing, evolving tastes, which includes working a lot with art dealers and artists on collaborations. So he's done Tom of Finland stuff and Gilbert and George, prints in his bags and his clothes. So I think that's something really interesting that the AI picked up on.
Yeah. Okay, let's go through and look at another one. Just stop us, Josh, when you see something that you want to.
I mean, I have to show you this with a really tiny head. I don't know what the hell was going on here. I was like, is that two people in the same outfit?
I think that almost denim this one is really interesting because it's pulling this patchwork idea. And I think about kind of the J.W. Anderson moments that have gone viral, and one of them is this patchwork cardigan that Harry Styles wore, that all through the pandemic people could download the pattern and knit it themselves. And I see that kind of recurring in a lot of these images. This
Show us which ones. I'll pass you a stack of images. And there's one more there, which is probably actually is answering the brief. Whoops. Can you just show me on which is a good camera to hold these up to as we go along? Which is a good camera to hold these to? To yours?
Yeah, just.
Because Josh is going to hold up a picture of Grace, so we just need to know who he's holding it up to. I think it's fine. We've got a sort of audience that we can't imagine and a creative we can't see. It's a fantastically surreal kind of moment we're living through here.
So I think this jacket is kind of playing.
Just show.
It's kind of playing on that that very viral cardigan that a lot of people on TikTok like ended up making and like showing off. So I wonder if you do Google J.W. Anderson, it's definitely one of the first images to come up. Same with these trousers. It's I think a very J.W. Anderson silhouette, and it does play with that patchwork idea again. Something with Jonathan Anderson is that I think he's really great, and it's what you were saying, where fashion is an art form or an expression of creativity. Jonathan's really great at kind of using his runway collections to present these ideas and to create a very, I guess, visceral, emotional moment. And on the flip side, create a very pared back commercial idea of that people will buy into.
Yeah.
So when you look at the J.W. Anderson e-commerce site, I think a lot of it is almost a lot more saleable than what you would see on the runway, and I think that's a recurring theme in what the AI generated.
Yeah.
So the AI has gone for the more commercially available stuff, which of course there will be more of than there is on the runway.
Yeah.
So sheer numbers are going to do it. I think one of the interesting things is I will send these to JW, to Jonathan, when we're finished. He might not respond. He might get no further than his
I'm just going to get banned from your shops.
Not at all. You probably get employed. And actually, that's a good point. You know, if I was starting a fashion brand now, I'd employ you straight away.
Yeah.
That would be my first port of call, depending on, of course, how much you charge.
Yeah.
But,
astronomical fees.
I would be sure I'd get it back in profit from having you on the team. But yeah, hopefully we can do that sort of follow-up where where Jonathan sits here and tells us where we went wrong. No, where we get his feedback from it.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
And whether he actually incorporates, we should look at the following season to see, because it's very hard when you suggest something to somebody for them to unsee it. You know, so he might, because he's a super subtle artistic fellow, he will see stuff on here which will go, oh wow, that's a bit my language, but I never thought of combining that with that. Well, that's what I wonder. I wonder if he uses these as some sort of prompt.
All right. We've got some more. This I like. I really think it's enjoy it.
The colors and the silhouette also gives me kind of his early Loewe women's wear.
I'll just go back to that one again. Is the model in there male or female?
At this point, I'm like.
But what's I just got over my sight shite, so I can't see things very well. So is it?
Does it
look like a boy or a girl?
It looks like a boy to me.
All right.
I think models-wise, this is probably closer to the kind of model that J.W. Anderson would hire. There's a real androgyny to what he presents. Because all of these models are.
That's my point. I couldn't tell whether it was my eyesight being a bit rubbish and the room being not exactly perfect for seeing screens, but hey, or whether or not it's just getting closer to what I think what you're saying.
We'll say design-wise, I don't think he would do this for J.W. Anderson menswear. I think there's always kind of a queer point of view, and it's not so literally feminine.
Yeah.
Whereas I think this is a very feminine look.
Sorry, so you're saying that this is too feminine for what he would do for J.W. Anderson?
For J.W. Anderson menswear, but I mean, it looks like it's leather-esque. There's a real craft element to these really beautiful flowers that I think is a lot more indicative of the Wave than his own brand.
Yeah. What we should do at the end of this, sorry, I'm talking out loud, but we should write down the points, ask you if you'll feed them back to Alan, and see how he modifies.
Yeah, absolutely.
See if he takes them on board, and then perhaps present that to JW.
Yeah.
So, okay, after discussion.
After lengthy discussion.
What time's the show?
I have to check.
Because, of course, what will happen is the show will have happened.
Yeah.
So.
We would have been like, yep, all of it was wrong. Or,
The show's
how do you know?
Show tonight.
Tonight at 6 our time.
So, if we can give you a list quickly, you got any time we can. I don't know how long it takes to.
Potentially, yeah.
Let's see. Not the end of the world, but it'd be an interesting thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, the show's out there. I will just go and reference.
Yeah.
Understand.
Trumpet.
Let's keep going through, please. Fascinating.
That's fun.
I love this. I love this.
Not that one, Josh.
I mean, I don't think Jonathan would do that, but I think there are elements to it that harken to like Jonathan's work. I think about that Ruffles collection he did, and kind of how he plays with proportion. Silhouette-wise, I don't think he'd ever do this kind of like A-line mod thing. He likes to play with like tight tops, wide trousers, short shorts, oversized knits.
Amazing. So look, one of the things I would love to share about this image is once the machine's working, it's really interesting. You know, we've talked a lot about like how it's always like trying to get to e-com. This was the same prompt essentially as the ones that you're seeing behind.
Right.
The difference is mathematical chaos was introduced. So
deliberately?
Yeah. So like you introduce an element of chaos and then it starts doing really, really crazy things that are completely outlandish, because it's really interesting, because I was like, I don't know whether this is or not. Like,
Well,
is this?
I think with J.W. Anderson, there is a certain degree of chaos, and you talked about kind of how interesting it'll be when counterculture utilizes AI. But I think counterculture is counterculture for a reason, because it's really pushing against existing averages and existing ideas. And that's definitely something Jonathan does.
Yeah.
This, I think, is really funny because one of, in the last couple of years, one of the big tropes he's done is kind of this mushroom print. And to see this model wear a mushroom hat.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Okay.
I will say a lot of it looks like Dior Men's by Kim Jones. I think the silhouette, the utilitarian idea.
Amazing.
But also like that kind of feminized floral print. Like, I think this feels a lot more Kim Jones than Jonathan Anderson.
I mean, yeah.
Get Jonathan accused of plagiarizing Kim. Excellent.
Those last two, I think, are quite interesting in the silhouette. This kind of like languid, clear summertime idea that's really interesting. And that kind of front pleat where it's almost a trouser, almost a skirt, is playing with those ideas of gender that Jonathan Anderson is really known for.
I mean, that's the things that we're sort of picking up and learning a bit from this this broadcast, is that, you know, we're giving you one of the hardest, or we're giving Alan one of the hardest designers to interpret. If we're giving you somebody, I mean, who would be an easy one? If we said, and I really don't mean this offensively, but if we gave them Versace, would that be more predictable?
I wonder, because I think there are so many really instantly recognizable Versace tropes that outside of fashion, people know. Outside of fashion, people associate these prints, this silhouette, these ideas of Italian glamour with Versace. So when you Google it, that is what comes up. Whereas J.W. Anderson, there's so much to pull from, because I think he's always constantly pushing himself. I think he's said in interviews in the past that he didn't come into fashion to be mediocre. He always wanted to be beyond average. And I guess with generative AI, it really pulls from average.
Yeah, that's what we were saying, isn't it? That it sort of it goes for the most information on things. But you could counter that, couldn't you?
That's where the idea of chaos comes in.
Yeah.
So once it's sort of like it gets blander and blander and blander, you just keep adding more chaos, and that keeps spinning it out in a way that I have no idea. It's inherently chaotic, so I have no idea why it's doing most of the things it's doing.
And is this the way that it works? So you give it a set of prompts.
Yep.
It sends you back an image. Do you then see that and re-prompt?
I mean, there's the way that, especially with these images, the way that we would get one master prompt, and that prompt would be inserted. We'd have a look at it and go, okay, then play around with, seeing if is there anything we can tweak with this to sort of make it work. I'm talking about what is it full body shot of the model? Is the model crouching? Really sort of like top level stuff. Yeah. And that's when, once you sort of like go, okay, cool, we'll read out this space, that's when you start introducing chaos. And then it'll again then mushroom outwards and go, okay, cool. Then I read like this, let's explore that, let's add some more chaos, and then that'll open it up again. So you're constantly creating this tree of image making that is just constantly evolving, and you can just keep adding more chaos. So you can flip them, when you think about like making images with generative AI, there are so many techniques, from injecting images, versioning, prompting, regular prompting, multi-prompting, chaotic prompting. There's just so many new techniques, and that's really what's interesting, and what I think is going to be really fascinating, because you're right, like when counterculture rebels against something, and that's what for me is really interesting, because the rebellion against AI is really obvious, because it's going to be a rebellion against the sort of like e-comming of creativity. So what happens when people use it for something completely different? And I just always think of the Roland 303, like that was not what it was supposed to be used for, but then birthed an entire culture. So it's a synthesizer that essentially sort of like started the acid house sound, and then that like created every other genre that's like existed in UK music for the last like 40 years. So it's really interesting. That was not what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to be like a guitar accompaniment. But then someone picked it up and went, I wonder what would happen if I did this? Which is the exact same thing. I'm really hoping that someone picks up AI and goes, I wonder what would happen if I did this?
That's almost certainly what will happen and what is happening.
Yeah.
And it does depend on the whole thing depends on, and this is why I keep saying it every interview I do, it's really important for artists like yourself to be involved in this. Because the artistic community in the whole shuns it and says, no, it's the end of the world, it's anti-humanity, etc., 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 it will be developed only for purposes which are commercial or military or pornographic or whatever it is, but they're not going to be the most creative reasons for that. But if the artistic community can get involved in it, I think it will do, because it's a bit like, people who are artistic in mind always look at new stuff, always look at different ways of working, always look at things which are a visual or artistic challenge to them. So, and especially as you said, a lot of imagery that's coming out is looking a bit samey. Yeah. There's a sort of AI look, which is why when there was that thing where that photo won a competition a couple of months ago or so, I was thinking, but it looked just like an AI. How did it miss all the judges? And they had no idea what AI looks like. It looked just like an AI. Yeah. So.
And with tools like Midjourney, you can tell it off a mile away. You can just look at an image and go, "That's a Midjourney image." You won't even need to go any further than that. And it's really interesting, because that is just one of an infinite kind of physical or sort of like creative spaces that we can go in. And already there are ways to make Midjourney do things that it's not supposed to do, and that's the sort of like that's the creative intent with all these tools.
It doesn't like that though.
It won't like that.
Telling you, it's going to chuck you off the site if you say that again. When I used Midjourney to begin with, and I used it for a project a while back, it was very sensorial. It was very much kind of, you couldn't say blood. Yep. You couldn't talk about periods, or you couldn't talk about anything that had any connotation to the female body. You couldn't say breasts. You couldn't say, you couldn't say see-through. All this sort of stuff. And you're thinking, crikey, it's like talking to some sort of religious maniac.
Yeah, it's really it's like talking to a prude. Like it really is. Like they won't let you do anything. And you know, my favorite example is I was trying to investigate Gorpcore a while ago, and I was like, I want to make some really cool Gore-Tex jackets. And it was like, you can't use the word gore. And I was like, dude, it's a jacket. You know, like even then I was like, okay, so what if I reference you know, Arc'teryx and go, it's an Arc'teryx jacket that I want to. It's an Arc'teryx Gore-Tex jacket still. It just won't
do Gore-Tex.
It just wouldn't do Gore-Tex because it's got a hyphen in it. Yeah.
Crikey.
But then if you do, at the same point, you're like, okay, so it won't do gore. But for a while, I think this hack has now been like fixed. But if you did close-up of taste buds, they were the most horrific images you've ever seen. Like they were like distorted mouths, teeth everywhere. It looked like motorbike crashes, basically, and really, 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 you know, like mid-journey level of reality. And you're like, that's the foulest thing I think I've ever seen. But they've quickly covered that. So like, you can, like, the machine isn't foolproof. Like their system of like. But then, I mean, you know, who would ever think like close-up of taste buds going to make gore? I would never think that.
No, I guess it's a kind of totally not what you wanted and not what you would think of. The one that I used to really like, and I haven't been using much for a while because I've been distracted by other projects. When I started using it was Midjourney, and it was DALL-E Mini. Now, DALL-E Mini seemed to be the kind of, you know, the rough punk version of all the other AIs. You could put anything, any prompt into it whatsoever. And on top of that, the imagery was so chaotic and such low quality that came out of it. It was beautiful. You know, not beautiful in the way that Midjourney is beautiful because it all looks like sort of fantasy art, but Midjourney in the kind of the surprising and disturbing images that came out of DALL-E Mini was fantastic. We actually used it for some of the chromatic of all. I'm not sure it got through in the end, but I was going to nip to loose. I'll be 2 seconds. Don't wait for me to come back. I'll be 2 minutes.
But that like sort of censorship also adds to the averaging out. Like if all these tools are like fully censored and you can't say, there's like a sort of lack of free speech element that you start getting into, and like what's right and what's wrong. Like does Gore-Tex stop existing because you can't say gore? So like they have to you know, like where does that lead us in terms of like the creative output of the world in like 20 years sort of? Because was it like Elon Musk wanted to have like an AI that was fully uncensored at one point? And like do you almost need that just to counterbalance the like really controlled version of AI that the big companies will have to put out? Do you need to have like, and also the open source stuff? That like free element has to still be there.
And you know, like with all of the new rules that are coming in, they're very much orchestrated to make sure that they're like the open source community is as stifled as possible. Because why did Elon Musk go, we need a 6-month break? Because he was busy trying to buy processors, and when he did, he's like, we're going to make a right-wing AI. And you're like, great, fantastic, great, racist AI. Not that I'm saying that's what he's going to do, obviously. But you know, like it's really interesting. And then you know, when we think about like what it's going to be used for creatively, like you know, when you're saying about like this, the trouser leg, because I was absolutely blown away by this, because I was like, has this happened before? And you know, because I don't know anything about like fashion in the same sort of way, I'm like, has someone done like a half skirt leg and a half trouser leg before?
Yes.
That's so legit. I was so blown away by it.
But again, I think it's, I guess, really funny because I think that's a very Kim Jones Dior thing again, and a lot of it just feels really like this set idea of what contemporary masculinity looks like, in the sense of how people are dressing, the things that people are buying. And J.W. Anderson is really about kind of breaking out of those like confines, this hegemonic idea of masculinity. Going back to counterculture and gore and things that you can't really use with AI, there's also a bit of a perverse quality to Jonathan's designs that I don't know if they would come through based on how AI works.
Maybe it's like censoring his actual I mean that's so crazy. I didn't even think about that. Like what is it censoring before I even get to see it?
Because I think he also plays with a lot of abstract ideas about masculinity and boyhood and queer desire that I don't know how that can be generated.
I mean, you know, all this makes me think is that it would have been amazing to make these images with you feeding into them, because then so much of this could have been, maybe we do that next.
Yeah, where were you, Josh?
Yeah. I said, birthdays, come on.
It's Josh's birthday today.
Yes, it is.
It is. Happy birthday, Josh. Anyway, moving on, sorry. Not moving on from Josh's birthday, because that's all day and we're never going to move on now. Moving on, what was I going to say? It was the DALL-E Mini stuff. I don't know how you prompt, but the way I would prompt when I was working with DALL-E Mini and with Midjourney was to give them two conflicting artists. So I would say in the style of Nan Goldin meets Balthus, or in the style of Michelangelo meets whoever, Martin Parr, or whatever it is. So you kind of you clash the artistic styles together. Do you also prompt?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you think about it, like for the longest time now, I mean, apart from this, but these haven't been given a photographer as a reference. So I haven't said like I want it in a style of, because I don't know, for me I've just felt really weird about asking for someone else's style. So when I'm smashing ideas together, I'm trying to understand the way that the AI works is it doesn't see pictures, it understands concepts. So if I can smash concepts together, what will come out of those two concepts? So, a really interesting example of that would be, my mind's gone blank with the amount of stuff that I've been doing recently. But there's a really interesting way of like smashing ideas together, and that's where even when we were thinking about this, we're like going, okay, we're smashing the idea of like J.W. Anderson with what the AI thinks Fashion Week is, and what does it think is going to happen in 2024, and one of the AIs explained what it thought. One of the AIs explains what it thinks Jonathan Anderson's going to do, and then the other one translates it into an image. And even in that, there is a loss, or there is a degradation of what one machine is saying to another one, which is really why I was like, I need to let the machines talk to each other, because I'm a human and I'm messing this process up. I want them to talk to each other as quickly as possible.
You slow old human.
Yeah. I'm just like a slow old human, and I'd much rather like I'll just let them get on with it, and then once they're done, they come back and show me what they've done, and I'm like, oh, I like that, I don't like that. Well, I like that. Can we do a little bit more of that? So it's way more of a sort of a directing of the creativity role, rather than like going, I need to work out this very sort of minutiae.
Yeah, because I think if you were, it's tricky here because you're asking the AI to predict the collection, and the collection manifests often in this format. So it manifests as a straight up, straight down image where you can see all things. That's how you understand the collection in terms of the presentation of it. Then the next stage in the fashion kind of fashion interest involvement is then great photographers interpret the collection. So a great stylist would interpret the collection. So back in the day before it was so you couldn't mix people's clothes up together, a great stylist would have gone and got something from a thrift shop, a J.W. Anderson pair of trousers and a shirt by Ralph Lauren, and mixed them all together. But this is much more what happens now, is you're not allowed editorially to mix the designers together.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a sort of the death of the stylist. Unfortunately, is that stylists are often told that they have to do a total look by the fashion brand that then passes that information onto the magazine, under the threat that they will pull their advertising from the magazine if they don't do the total look.
That's really counterintuitive. It's so counterintuitive to me, because I'm like, I've never just worn one brand apart from like maybe when I wore Nike tracksuits years ago. Like never. Like who wears one brand only?
I would not want to comment on that.
All right, fine. We'll get the AI to have a chat with them.
It is a fair rep in defence of the AI, which is working in the system that it works today, which is a presentation of a collection is a bit like this. Most people don't give you a sort of filmic presentation of the spirit behind their collection. They give you a pretty one, route one, kind of up and down, all lit, everything. You see the whole thing in one look. It'd be interested, and I don't know if Alan can, to see little. Because of course where e-commerce is going now is into movement. So that's what we're doing at Margiela, is Britt Lloyd's filming all the looks, and then making everything in move, because all the designers create their garments to be seen in life in movement. So that's what we're trying to show on the Margiela site. It'd be interesting to know whether it can generate small bits of film that would show the 360 of the garment, if that's part of the prompt. Because of course you're seeing the front face, but not what the attachments are at the back, etc.
I mean, honestly, that is the holy grail for most people who are working in AI. Like, how do you show one fashion piece on a model and then do that at scale? And because as soon as you figure out how you can get a piece of clothing onto a virtual model, then you can make that virtual model do anything you want. You can make them appear anywhere in the entire universe, moving, still, 3D, whichever one you want. And like this morning, you know, I think every time I like see you, I'm always like, and then this new thing came out, and it's literally been like 30 minutes since it's come out, and it's called like this morning. This thing came out, and I think it's called like try on diffusion. And I mean, it takes hours, and they haven't released the code. I think it takes 9 hours to make one image, but you just give it a flat of anything you want, and then it will put that on any model in any particular. Like you can ask it for any pose. But that, for me, I'm like, that feels like the death of a lot of like...
On a static pose? Or?
Yeah, on a static pose and video. It's going to be video as well, Right,
okay.
That's the plan. That's the plan for them. And, you know, I think most people are waiting for that. Like, how do you do that? And I think some people will expect that it's going to have a seismic change. But I feel like most people will just... It's not going to change much.
Why, and Josh, correct me, or Michael, if either of you know, is there anybody who's thought, right, okay, I will become an AI designer. I will use my AI to make a collection, and I will create that collection in real and put it on a real catwalk.
The first ever kind of AI fashion week took place in New York earlier this year, and it was part competition that artists from around the world sent in their collections, and I think pieces from the collections from the 3 winners are meant to go into production.
Right. So physical production or...
Physical production and digital, or so as in AR, virtual wearables, and I think there's an aspect of physical production, but I have no idea what scale.
If I was sitting here and didn't want to continue doing everything else I'm doing, and Omar was available, I would say, why don't we create a collection? Why don't we keep on feeding in, take all the things that we love, you know, I love like original Cristobal Balenciaga, you know, I love Yohji Yamamoto from the early 1980s, you know, I love all these different things, Comme des Garçons from 1990s. Let's feed all these references in, plus our own, you know, actually I want to see something which is a kind of long silhouette, or I want to see something which is monochromatic, or, you know, all the things that we want to see, create a collection, then get the AI to output it, we'd approve it, and then get the AI, and stop me if this is not possible, to make patterns from that.
That's possible, yeah.
Okay, and then make them into a collection which you put out on the runway.
Yeah, I mean,
What are we waiting for?
Yeah. Do we do the hand thing now?
I think this idea of pulling from what's in e-commerce now, or what's like being in the first chunk of searches, and creating something incredibly commercial and saleable from that is a really interesting idea for brands, because if I look around these images...
Yeah, what do you want?
I think a lot of these things people are buying right now and would be more than happy to spend X amount of money on. I think those leather trousers are really cool, and
It's very long, the dark ones.
Yeah, and right next to it, that kind of aviator jacket is really like a commercial piece that I think a lot of men are probably looking at right now.
Yeah, well, I saw something I was after too, but we're trying to find it now about embarrassing.
Put your orders in.
Yeah, exactly. Why not? I mean,
No, honestly, like when you think about this part of the creativity going up to the inspiration and creative part, you can then extend that straight out into the production part as well. You know, what happens when you do send these patterns straight to a laser cutting machine, or how much AI could you use in the entire production? I think there are going to be people who are going to investigate that. You know, when you can print out shoes, and people giving out free shoe designs, and you know, there's all manner of like ways of bringing this into the real world.
I think another, I guess, funny idea would be quite conceptual or sculptural designers who make quite amazing things on the runway, but can't translate that into a saleable collection, which is the problem a lot of young designers have. It's a problem a lot of mid-level designers and even higher-end designers have an issue with. But using AI to take their kind of abstract collection and looking at kind of fit, silhouette, the garments that are selling right now, how does that collection translate into something that you can sell to everyone, that everyone will look at and want to buy?
Yeah,
that's a genius idea.
Because there is, you know, a lot of problems. Production really changes the whole collection. I think we were talking about this on the afternoon tea on Friday. is that people don't realise that production is such a huge part of what actually it becomes available to buy. Because a designer can have an amazing idea and make a one-off to put on a runway, and then goes back to the production house and says, okay, well, we've had 20,000 orders in, and they go, well, we're not turning, that took us a week to do for you, we can't turn it around. No, and it never sees light day. So,
but I think that's why like Jonathan Anderson is quite revered and one of the more important menswear designers right now, is because he has found that balance between using fashion as an art form to express these really emotional, abstract ideas, but can translate that into very saleable, wearable clothes that people desire.
Yeah. I just want to check time, because I know, crikey, we talked our way through the best part of 2 hours. You've got to go at 1, is that correct?
Yeah, I can stay around a little bit longer. There's one thing I would really love to show you.
Yes.
When I was getting into design all these pieces, eventually I was like, okay, this is great, but what about the rest of the creative process? So it's like, can you make me some mood boards?
Yeah.
And it made a whole bunch of really nice mood boards. But I would love to see, I'd love to hear, are these mood boards correct? Are these even real? Would they make sense? So let's have a look.
Are we gonna kind of, from our conversation, regenerate new images that we're gonna compare with the show?
If you have the time, that would be great.
I'll be able to do it today. I'm going to try to do it for 6, but I'm not 100% sure I can hit 6.
If you can, and it's not too much of an ask, that would be great. If not, it's totally fine. I would like to be able to send something to Jonathan and say, look, we did this discussion. We predicted with an AI what your collection might be. We'd love just to hear your feedback, even if it's I love it all or I hate it all. It'd just be good to get some sort of feedback.
I'm going to put that on my LinkedIn straight away, whatever it is.
Next season, crazy.
The most hated, Jonathan's most hated AI guy. All right, so check these out, right?
You won't become Jonathan's most hated AI guy. You're offering him something that's present.
What I found really fascinating about it, I didn't say anything about collecting swatches or anything.
Right.
And it gave it this just visually the depth and the shadows that he gave between each one, the textures, and the torn bits of paper, the little swatches, just absolutely blew me away. Now I don't know if they're in any way right.
Now, but hold on. So for that one, is Alan saying this would be the mood board that would create this piece?
Yeah.
Because there was green in the mood board, but not in the piece. Alan, what are you thinking?
Yeah. I honestly so the instruction that I gave Alan for this was while it was making these images was also to generate a mood board.
Right.
So,
okay.
I don't even know.
So it could be the background. It's thinking about that.
It could be the background. I don't know why the model's there. Is it showing us the size of the pocket? Is it a really, really big hand? Is it a really small head? Is it massive collars? Are they giving it a small head so the collars look big?
Right.
So there's so much of it that's our actual interpretation of what.
Do you ever see the references that it uses for each thing, or is that in the black box?
Yeah, that's so far in the black box, and with the sort of references it uses. Yeah, they're with proprietary things like Midjourney, no one knows what they're using, and that's why with their new EU AI laws, it's not going to be. I'm not 100% sure they're going to be around, or there's going to be some sort of issue with Midjourney because of what they use. But with other ones like Stable Diffusion, they've got a new model which is called SDX, I think. That does really, really great pictures. That does really, really it's not Midjourney-ish yet, but it's kind of getting there. But again, that's why I have no idea why it's pulling these things. I don't even know. Is this thing here a buttonhole or something? I have no idea. Is there a porthole in a really bad?
Yeah, the thing that most designers that I've seen at this stage of the development, the mood board stage, it's a lot of imagery. Often it's just photographs. So attitudes or I used to work with John Galliano at Dior, and at that point, in fact, there's a project on SHOWstudio, which shows John used to get his atelier to make books of all the sort of mood boards.
Amazing.
But he'd make the clothing on dolls. So in the books, there'd be actual physical dolls that the atelier would make, so handmade dolls in the book, dressed as part of the kind of thing. So you should have a look. It's called Editing Fashion.
Amazing.
SHOWstudio, and it's got a whole lot. It's a very, very big project. Part of it is John's reference books to that collection, and you can see all the looks that end up on the runway as dolls, which were done previously.
Wow.
But that's the thing that I'm not seeing here from Alan. He's suggesting colour palette and to some degree some bit of sort of some detail like the button or whatever, but not the fashion imagery.
I think again, there's a very commercial viewpoint with what's being generated.
Yeah.
Mood board wise, if I think about print and color and texture, I would think more on the lines of like a brand like J. Crew, who kind of have their silhouettes ready to produce and really just need to pick fabrics and color and material, all of that, rather than a designer like Jonathan Anderson, who's about ideas, who's about photography, who's about film and vintage magazines and these random things that inspire him.
Well, you know, the thing to do, if Jonathan wanted to play ball on this, which he might or might not, is for him to give us his mood board. And for us to feed in either a description or... Can you... Sorry, I might be being simple, but can you send Alan an image? You can.
Yeah.
So you could send a...
You can send Alan an image. The problem with sending it out...
how to interpret it.
It's exactly, like, we have no idea how he might interpret it. Like, what pixel on that entire image has inspired Alan to go, amazing, I'm going to do this. And the more I'm, like, trying to give it control over itself, the more interesting it is, but also the more frustrating it can be as well, because I'm like, can you do this thing, Alan? And Alan's like, no, I'm fine not doing that, thanks.
I've got to let you go, because I've been told you've got to go at 1, and we're 1 minute to 1. Although I could talk to you forever, I can't. So we've got our young AI, Imagery Grace, who is just a fashion critic and picking up their own thing. Now, Michael's just helped me on this one. Imagery Grace isn't learning on the job, is it?
Not yet.
Are they? Sorry.
No, they are purely language model. So it just sort of is taking the request and then interpreting it based on our input and learning and information we're giving it, and then giving it back. So currently there's no like iterating learning, I don't think. But that would be the next step. So it doesn't necessarily remember. It might remember one conversation, but then when we move to another designer, that's kind of a new brain with new information. So it kind of, it's all okay.
Christoph, you just pass us Imagery Grace from the front desk there, as we have a physicality of them.
Yeah. But why I find this Alan so interesting is that it feels way more like a person that you're working with. Which is sort of what we would love to go in towards.
I mean, like, if you think about, like I said, there's been 13 versions of Alan, all the way from like basically just a chatbot to a fine-tuned version to, like, you know, there was one that it picked its own face. And it was really amazing because it picked it was amazing because it picked Alan's face and it gave itself lots of skin problems. It was really amazing, and it wasn't like a beautiful, wow, you're so stunning. It was like, you know, a very normal looking person with a bit of a skin issue around its nose and a bit over here, and I was like, wow, like, why have you chosen to do that for? Like,
it's a weird thing. I was trying. A lot of this whole thing comes back from like years ago when I was looking through the stats for SHOWstudio, and somebody I was working on, I think possibly Danny, but it might have been you, so stop me if it was, said to me, you know that almost half of our traffic is from bots. So I thought, oh, okay. And I thought, wait a minute, what are they looking for on the site? And can we do a site which is just for bots then, as half of a bot? And then whoever I was talking to said to me, no, they're looking for your bank account details. That's the only thing they want to see. So it wouldn't be a great site for anybody other than you just lose loads of money. Similar to SHOWstudio. Anyway, so I do think this is fascinating. I would love at some point in the future to get Imagery Grace to talk to Alan. I don't know how that happens.
I'm sure we will.
That would be fantastically interesting to see what they do. Maybe we have to frame that. We'll see how Imagery Grace
I would love to see the live stream of like 2 laptops talking to each other. We could just like...
We'll just have to be a kind of audience. Go, look what I've done.
So
you probably just need to explain it. Can it happen in real? Could we actually do that? Could we get Imagery Grace talking to? A physical thing we can film with us.
I don't imagine why not. Like, it's whatever your chat's coming in on.
In world at the moment, I think we'll go to just a GPT. We'll just use GPT.
So honestly, I would definitely recommend that as well. Like, it'll be a way easier process for you to work through, and then. If you were using OpenAI's APIs, then that's what Alan uses most of the time. This particular one does. because it's a lot easier for it to sort of like communicate. But it'll be easy as pie.
Well, we come at it from a slightly the other way from you. I must let you go, but
No,
we
it's all
start
good,
with
it's all good.
physicality.
Yeah.
So this is obviously a scan of somebody that some people, quite a lot of people know who it is. So we start with a physical thing, and then we kind of give it a voice, etc., etc., etc. Whereas Alan doesn't have a physicality at the moment. We can't 3D print out Alan. That's what I'd like to try and do.
Yeah.
So if Alan, or if you can try and give Alan a physicality so they can physically sit next to each other.
I mean, that would be amazing. I just feel, well, what do you want to be? And, maybe they could also, be really interesting to see if they could meet in a virtual world as well.
Yeah.
Can they both sort of like have independence as NPCs in Fortnite, for example, and then they could just like travel.
That would be good.
Yeah.
That would be
and that's totally doable now as well. So.
Evie Grace has a voice, very beautiful voice. Alan at the moment doesn't have a voice.
No.
Would you be up for finding a voice for Alan?
Yeah, I mean,
we've got a whole bunch that we prepared.
Yeah. Honestly, for the longest time, the last version of Alan that had a voice was Alan Partridge. So it was very spectacular, but also a massive copyright infringement. So. I've
Do you see that as a copyright infringement?
I mean, I imagine like Steve Coogan would not be happy with someone using his voice to say
all the things
that Alan says. Yeah.
But that's a very hard thing to prove, somebody's voice.
Oh, it's very clearly Alan Partridge.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Because I was like thinking like, whose voice? What's the most famous Alan? Like, obviously it's Alan Partridge. So
Alan Turing. The guy who invented.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like, I don't know what he sounds like, and I'm not 100% sure what other people.
Like Benedict Cumberbatch as well.
yeah, exactly. Amazing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much
and helping predict what JWS is going to do this evening. Let's keep this conversation going. And Josh, thank you so much for providing all the information, Michael. Thank you very much. So lovely. We will see you for our next discussion on AI and fashion. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Right.